From antiquity to today, people have a hidden desire for fame, power, and glory. This is often reflected in their admiration or attention towards people who stand out and excel in a certain field of human activity. That's not necessarily wrong if it's for a noble cause, but unfortunately, this is not always the case. As a result, since these icons and beloved figures are a projection of their desires for admiration, people accordingly will follow them and idolize all their deeds, treating them like gods. Although, certainly, there are also human beings with their respective strengths and weaknesses. Like one of the most loved and admired figures of all times, Jesus Christ used to say, "Nobody's perfect." I'm Mike with List 25, and the 25 unpleasant facts about history's best people that follow will definitely convince you about that.
25.
Alexander the Great murdered his best friend. We literally need a whole list, if not a book, to mention the legendary Greek king's accomplishments. He's mainly remembered for being undefeated in battle and possibly the most successful military command history has ever witnessed. He's also responsible for the spread of Greek culture worldwide and the birth of the so-called Hellenistic civilization aspects, of which were still evident in the traditions of the Byzantine Empire in the mid-15th century CE and the presence of Greek speakers in central and far eastern Anatolia until the 1920s. However, there are some not nice things to say about the greatest general of all time, especially him killing his best friend named Cletus while being extremely drunk. Truth be told, Cletus kept pushing and insulting the great conqueror, but he probably didn't expect that this would be the last thing he would do during his lifetime. For the record, other than being his close friend, Cletus also had saved Alexander's life in battle.
24.
Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry is one of the most significant early rockers. Actually, he was the first artist to exhibit many of the traits that would come to define rock and roll. He wasn't as good of a person in his everyday life, though. See, the famous musician had already been convicted of armed robbery by the time he graduated high school. Later in life, he had many more troubles with the law, including one which he took a 14-year-old girl across state lines in 1962 and one in 1979 for tax evasion.
23.
Charlie Chaplin dated underage girls. Famous for his character the Tramp, this sweet little man with a bowler hat, mustache, and cane, Charlie Chaplin was an iconic figure of the silent film era. This iconic actor, however, also had a very bad habit of chasing underage girls. When he was 30, he impregnated a 16-year-old actress, and his next relationship was with 15-year-old Lita Gray.
22.
John Lennon mocked disabled people, among other things. John Lennon's status as a legend of music is set in stone. However, the Beatles icon had a much darker side. Love him or hate him, the fact is that Lennon wasn't the saint that media portrayed him to be after his death. Archive footage revealed during Channel 4's show It Was Alright in the 1960s showed in 2015 the legendary singer mocking disabled people. Lennon's attitude towards hitting women isn't something he shied away from either. In fact, he openly admitted it during a 1980 interview with Playboy, while insisting his earlier violence motivated his later calls for peace and love.
21.
Oprah Winfrey's overlooked racist hate speech. Oprah Winfrey is one of the most beloved women in American history. Her influence is literally out of this world. She's become a feminist and anti-racist symbol by American media who love and worship her for her efforts to bring people of all cultures, races, and religions together. However, when she's discussing racism, she doesn't appear to be all that peaceful or colorblind. During an interview, Oprah pretty much said that all old white people need to die for the world to become a better place because, according to her, all older white people are racists.
20.
Walt Disney wasn't the best boss out there. Walt Disney is one of these immortal figures who have inspired, inspire, and will continue to inspire hundreds of millions of people worldwide with his creations. He liked to express his wonders of imagination and invention, and when he made Mickey Mouse, he became an inspiring hero to others and was a very creative person. Disney jump-started his career. It was the animation that he and a team of artists came up with that really helped with their success in the industry. But all these things are pretty much known for Mr. Disney. What most of you don't know is that he also had another little darker side. It seems like Disney refused to hire women. He apparently replied to an aspiring female animator in a letter saying he wouldn't hire her because he didn't believe women should do that sort of job. Further, he frequently fired his animators. At one point, his animators went on strike because of pay disparities, and many of them never got the checks they thought they deserved. He cycled through many staff members so frequently that a bunch of them came together to start a rival company.
19.
John F. Kennedy was pretty much a hypocrite. JFK is another figure who the media have worshipped to a ridiculous extent. However, it seems like the former president was all human too, with some really unhealthy and bad habits. See, before enacting the Cuban trade embargo in 1962, he made sure to secure for himself 1,200 Cuban cigars. Not exactly the selfless American icon history books and media have taught us.
18.
The rebellious Emmeline Pankhurst died an unabashed imperialist. Emmeline Pankhurst was a pivotal figure in the fight for women's right to vote. Thanks to the militant tactics of the Women's Social and Political Union, the organization she founded in 1903 and led until 1918, British women won their right to vote almost a century ago. Without Pankhurst's courageous, committed, and radical leadership, none of this would have happened. Not back then, anyway. Partly thanks to her fear of communism, Pankhurst became surprisingly conservative later in life. An unabashed imperialist, she was prone to zealous defenses of the British Empire, something that casts an unpleasant shadow over her popular image as a progressive, radical figure of the early 20th century.
17.
Winston Churchill. Undoubtedly the most famous British Prime Minister in history, Churchill is best remembered for successfully leading Britain through World War II. He was famous for his inspiring speeches and for his refusal to give in, even when things were going poorly. What most don't know, however, is that the extra supplies he used for the British people and military during World War II came from India. Or, to make it even more simple, Churchill starved India intentionally to the point that he sparked the devastating Bengal famine of 1943, a famine that led to the loss of 3 million Indians, mainly kids.
16.
Muhammad Ali was a separatist. Ali is another modern icon that's been worshipped by Western media as an anti-racist rebel, when in reality many of his beliefs were awfully racist and misogynistic. Other than being unfaithful and considering women inferior human beings, Muhammad Ali called fellow African-American boxer Joe Frazier ugly and Uncle Tom and a gorilla. During a racist delirium he had on live TV, Ali openly admitted that interracial relationships and marriages are pretty much a mistake and a sin against God and Mother Nature. Somehow, American media still refer to Ali as an anti-racist hero for some strange reason.
15.
Karl Marx didn't attend his father's funeral. Karl Marx was a famous philosopher, author, social theorist, and an economist. He's famous for his theories about capitalism and communism. Ironically, Marx was eloquent in describing the exploitation of the working class while personally failing to maintain a job for a significant period of time. In other words, Marx was a little lazy, yet he felt like representing, with his theories, not actions, the whole world's working class. Further, Karl Marx didn't attend his father's funeral. Rumors have it that he fell asleep and didn't hear the alarm clock ringing.
14.
Nelson Mandela was not a family man. Nelson Mandela led the emancipation of South Africa and served as his country's first black president. He became an international emblem of dignity and forbearance. Despite being a great man on the world stage, he wasn't a good father or husband in his home life. To get a better idea, Mandela didn't even attend the birth of his daughters. To put it simply, Mandela was not a family man.
13.
Napoleon was a cheater. Napoleon Bonaparte was a very intelligent general, possibly the most intelligent to ever live. And like most dominant conquerors of history, Napoleon didn't like to lose. Not even when he was playing games such as cards. See, the keen instinct he developed for finding an enemy's weak points and exploiting every advantage was of little use during his exile in Elba. There, he turned that instinct towards chronic cheating at card games he played with his companions. One way or another, Napoleon always found a way to win, even when he was losing, really.
Really? You cheated on cards?
Remember how I said? Remember how I said earlier? It said Napoleon's cheating. I'm like, that's probably at board games, and I was joking. I still joking because it was cards, not board games.
12.
Enid Blyton was a horrible wife and mother. Way before J.K. Rowling, there was Enid Mary Blyton, an English children's writer whose books have been among the world's best sellers since the 1930s, selling more than 600 million copies. Blyton's books are still enormously popular and have been translated into 90 languages. Some of her most famous include The Famous Five and The Secret Seven. So, the millions of children and adults who know her through her work may love her, but her own daughter wasn't even fond of her. She described her as arrogant, insecure, pretentious, and without a trace of maternal instinct. We also learn that Blyton had an affair while married to her first husband, and he filed for divorce. She wouldn't allow him visitation rights with her children after that, while her various boyfriends had everyday access to them.
11.
Roald Dahl's possible anti-Semitism. In case his name doesn't ring any bells for you, Roald Dahl's legally to blame for the legendary children's book all of us know and love, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. During a 1983 interview, Dahl pretty much justified Hitler's hate over the Jews, suggesting that there's a trait in the Jewish character that does provoke animosity. Thank God he didn't include any such beliefs in his wonderful books.
10.
Isaac Newton was a massive jerk. Isaac Newton is well known for his discoveries in optics, white light composition, and mathematics, calculus. However, it's his formulation of the three laws of motion, the basic principles of modern physics, for which the world is grateful to him. Despite his greatness as a scientist, Isaac Newton, the man, was cold, ruthless, calculating, cunning, and quick-tempered. To make a long story short, the man had no real friends and never got married simply because he was treating everyone like shit.
9.
Mother Teresa may not be as holy as portrayed. Mother Teresa may have become a saint from the Catholic Church, but the work of the most famous Catholic nun in history has received mixed reactions from prominent people, governments, and organizations. Her practices and those of the Missionaries of Charity, the order which she founded, were subject to numerous controversies. These include objections to the quality of medical care which they provided, suggestions that some deathbed baptisms constituted forced conversion, and alleged links to colonialism and racism. Mother Teresa has also received extensive media coverage, and some critics suggest that the church used her image to promote Catholicism and divert the public's attention from sexual abuse cases.
8.
Mahatma Gandhi abandoned his father's deathbed to go have sex. Mahatma Gandhi was the leader of India's non-violent independence movement against the British. Also in South Africa, he advocated for the civil rights of Indians. Born in Porbandar, India, Gandhi studied law and organized boycotts against British institutions in peaceful forms of civil disobedience. What most people don't know about Gandhi the Peacemaker is that he abandoned his own father's deathbed to go have sex. What makes things even worse is that his father died helplessly in his son's absence.
7.
Sigmund Freud was a hater. Freud's contributions to psychiatry abound, and a good argument could be made for him to be first on this list of influential thinkers. The father of psychoanalysis, Freud, championed the idea that much of mental life existed at a level that's outside our awareness, and that these unconscious forces yield great influence on human conduct. The ideas of the famous Jewish psychiatrist permeated American psychiatry throughout most of the 20th century. And it's Freud who is responsible for opening up psychiatry to outpatient practice. However, he despised all things American. America is a mistake, Freud stated in an interview once, and continued, a gigantic mistake it is true, but nonetheless a mistake.
6.
Johnny Cash was a fire starter. Johnny Cash, much like Elvis and the Beatles, revolutionized music. His Western, folk, blues genres were seen by America as the epitome of American music at the time. Not only did the music sound catchy, the band was pretty danceable, but it really catered to the American style of music at the time. He was also very creative in his songwriting. What we learned after his death, however, is that a drunk and totally wasted Cash accidentally ignited an infamous 1965 wildfire at Los Padres National Forest. The blaze ended up killing 49 of the park's 53 endangered California condor vultures.
5,
Frank Sinatra's mafia ties. Frank Sinatra was an American singer, actor, and producer. He's one of the most popular and influential musical artists ever, with many music experts describing him as the greatest American singer of the 20th century. Other than his great vocal skills and big hits, Mr. Sinatra is also notorious for his connections with the mafia and for being a very jealous husband. During one argument with his then-wife and famous actress Ava Gardner, he supposedly fired a gun into a hotel room mattress to threaten her.
4,
Martin Luther King Jr. was a certified plagiarist, among other things. Martin Luther King Jr. is considered the face of the civil rights movement and one of the most respected men in contemporary American history. However, in his personal life, he wasn't all that great after all. King allegedly plagiarized parts of his doctoral thesis on systemic theology, while many of his famous speeches have been proved to be the result of plagiarized content as well. However, the most eye-opening part of Dr. King's personal life were his numerous extramarital affairs, which led to Lyndon B. Johnson calling him a hypocritical preacher.
3,
Albert Einstein's genius was overrated. Although the famous scientist didn't do something evil or wrong, the truth is that his genius has been ridiculously exaggerated by modern media. To begin with, Albert Einstein's failures, including the first 7 proofs of E equals mc squared and his early understanding of clock synchronization, appear to be far more than his correct theories. There's no doubt that for his time he was one of the greatest geniuses in physics, but if he were magically transported to today's physics environment, he would only be decent. In other words, Einstein was a big fish in a small pond. But in the big ocean of physicists that we have today, there are undoubtedly bigger fish.
2,
Abraham Lincoln didn't see black people as true Americans. There's no doubt that Abraham Lincoln is one of the most influential and important Americans to ever live. For all the good he did for this country, though, he definitely wasn't perfect. As history has rightfully taught us, Lincoln often expressed moral opposition to slavery in public and private. If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong, he stated in a now famous quote. He eventually became the president that abolished slavery. Soon after that, however, he contemplated sending freed slaves back to Africa. In other words, Lincoln may have been against slavery, but at the same time, he didn't really see black people as an intrinsic part of American society.
1,
Aristotle didn't think highly of women. The Greek philosopher Aristotle made significant and lasting contributions to nearly every aspect of human knowledge, from logic to biology to ethics and aesthetics. In Arabic philosophy, he was known simply as the first teacher, while in the West, he was the philosopher. According to a 7-year study conducted by MIT University Media Lab, Aristotle was found to be the most influential human being to ever live, ahead of even religious figures as Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha. For all his greatness and contributions to the world, Aristotle had flaws too. To be more specific, he saw women as subject to men, but considered them to be higher than slaves. He thought that a good woman should raise the kids, be a good housewife, and lack any kind of social authority. He suggested that the husband should exert political rule over the wife. So, what are some unpleasant facts about other great people from history? Let us know in the comments below, or tweet your answer to us at List25 or to me personally at Michael B. Estrin. And I just want to say the views expressed by our writer here don't necessarily mirror the views of Tristan and I or List25 as a whole. But if you like this video, check out the ones in this playlist here.